If you're not measuring, your people are going to get calls. Your CSR is going to say, this person canceled, they were so angry, and you're going to feel bad. It's like, it's emotional. They had that conversation. But that's 2% of the people that you raise the customer base on. Your kid comes home, got a 98% on a test. That's an A+.
So we essentially have three big levers that we can kind of control in order to maintain our gross margin. The first one is we can decrease our costs. In our industry, labor is our biggest cost, so we can do pay cuts. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you want all your techs to leave. The second one is we can increase our route density, and then the third one is we can also increase our revenue in the form of a price increase, which is probably the easiest lever to pull.
Okay. So, do I raise my prices on all customers equally, or are there differences?
So there's definitely differences. There's basically two schools of thought on how to do a price increase, and they both have their pros and cons. The first one is that across the board, 5 to 7% increase for all of our customers. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Pros of that, very easy to do. Also, it's kind of necessary to keep up with inflation. The downside is you might have a very unprofitable customer. That 5 to 7% might not even be enough to get them up to a profitable level. On the other side, you might have a very profitable customer. Why even touch them? Why give them that 5 to 7 increase and all of a sudden they leave, right?
Stay under the radar is what you're saying.
Exactly.
So when you say, that, some customers are less profitable than others, or their dollar per hour is less, that's because of retreats and things like that?
Yes, generally retreats and reservices, that's going to increase the amount of time we're servicing a customer, and that'll decrease the profitability of that customer.
So when we talk about this model, it's different than giving everybody across the board price increase. Talk about like the electric companies. How do the electric companies deal with this kind of thing versus what we do?
Right, so your electric company is going to bill you based off of your usage. The more power you use, the more you're going to pay. We need to do the same thing. If we're spending more time at a customer, our pricing for that customer needs to reflect the amount of time that we're spending to service them.
This is so important, right? This is a model, this is a mind shift in the pest control industry, right? So by the way, if you use internet and you pay every month the same price, 5 or 10 years from now, you're going to pay on usage, right? If you're just shooting a couple of emails out versus streaming all day long, okay, your price is going to be different. And we're no different, right? If you use our service more, why shouldn't you pay more for the service? However, just because you use us more, maybe it's your fault. Maybe your technician's not trained. Maybe something went wrong. So, you've got to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so how often should we do this?
We want to be, at a bare minimum, we should be reviewing our customers on an annual basis. We would actually recommend almost including this in your monthly close process to make this a more continual process, and that's just because customers can go from profitable to unprofitable in within a month or two if they have a few reservices. So it's very important to kind of continue monitoring our customers.
So one of the things that we recommend is that as part of your closeout process each month, that you look at and do your price increases monthly based on the anniversary date of the contract. It's not always feasible with the commercial accounts that you're locked into, but mainly with residential and small commercial you can do this. Okay, so we talked about the 3 buckets. Is that where we're at now?
Yeah, acceptable dollar per hour.
The acceptable dollar per hour. So how much do we raise the prices, and how is that predicated?
Yeah, so the first thing we need to do is figure out what an acceptable hourly rate is that we want to charge our customers. So we actually have a service where we'll help kind of analyze your customer base. And the first question I always ask a client is, do you have an acceptable hourly rate? Everyone says yes. The second question I ask is, how did you come up with that rate? The answers I usually get are, I heard it at a conference 5 years ago. My buddy told me that's what his rate was, and somebody actually said, I picked $150 because it's an even number and it's nice to look at. So.
By the way, that's not a bad way to do it, right?
No, so we kind of want to put a little more thought into our target dollar per hour, right? Because a target for one company might not be the right target for another company, right? So we actually work backwards. We want to figure out what's a good gross margin we want, right? So generally we want to see 50 to 55%. From there, we need to actually figure out what's our cost per hour to service a customer. So that's going to include our labor, our materials, our vehicle expenses. And then from there, we can actually back into what our hourly target should be. So let's just say we want a 50% gross margin. It costs us $50 an hour to service a customer. We need to be going for at least $100 an hour to charge our customers.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is each year, or if you want to get really intense about it, each month, we're refiguring out what our hourly cost is plus a reasonable profit, and that's our acceptable dollars per hour. And then what you're saying is that's where we start with.
Correct.
Okay, so we're gonna.
Yeah, I was going to say what we do with that hourly rate is we can use that hourly to now segment our customers into buckets. So let's say our target hourly rate is going to be $100. We'll identify.
By the way, $100 is too low.
Yeah.
It's just we're doing this.
Keeping the mental math easy.
Yeah.
From there, we can identify our non-performing customers, our performing customers, and our outperforming customers, right? So our performing customers, we need to draw the line in the sand somewhere, right? So we'll take that $100 and we'll say plus or minus 5%, right? So on the lower end of the spectrum, we'll accept anywhere from $95 to $105. Those are going to be our performing customers. Generally won't get a big increase, probably a slight one just to kind of keep up with inflation. Those customers below $95, those are going to be your population of customers that are probably going to get a pretty significant increase over the next year or so. And then we have our outperformers above that $105 mark where you probably don't want to touch them, or if you do, it's a very, very minimal increase.
Yeah, so obviously some of us have some really terrible customers on our books that we'd love to get rid of. We'd like to price them out. I mean, just to be honest. And,
We don't.
And what I'm wondering is, is there a best practice in terms of like an upper limit? Is it too fast, too soon? Do you guys have a sense for that where you don't want to risk getting hammered with a 1-star review because you raised somebody up too quickly or too high?
Yeah. So
take that one?
Sure, I'll take this one, and I'll just use this microphone.
segue.
Yeah. So you do not want to necessarily scare people off, right? Part of the beauty that we were talking about before, being charged regularly, putting in a price increase that's even a solid 10% price increase is on a monthly bill that could really fly under the radar. And so you're not looking to fix every problem customer in a single year. You're looking to move them up bit by bit. And the 7 to 10% range is a nice way to think about it. You also want to compare against the competition. So what we'll do is call competitors and say, like, what's the general quote? And, it is good to be priced against competitors. We can talk about that in a moment. But you don't necessarily want to be so far ahead that you're going to get a 1-star review.
But I would tell you, don't be afraid of customers who bully you, because you know what? Maybe it's better.
Yeah.
Maybe it's better that you leave and go use the other guy, right? So we figured out this dollar per hour, this acceptable dollar per hour. Is there a difference between a 2 or 3 man operation or woman operation and Rollins or somebody who has 10,000
Yes.
technicians?
So some people, I think the reason why that question is important is people think that they should be thinking about this decision differently because of their size. You should certainly be doing your own local analysis. Look at your own costs, your own targets, your own competition, your own region. But the cost structure, the method of the analysis, is just the same between a Rollins and a 2-man operation. Ultimately, if you look at Rollins P&L, they're going to have very similar cost structure to anyone else because they still have to send a tech. They still got it. Maybe they pay slightly less for chemicals. Yeah. But it's the same business.
They may be able to buy chemicals better, but they also have administrative costs that you don't have. If you look at the P&L on the publicly issued financial statements, it's not much different than the smaller companies. So the reason that I bring this up is you don't want to say, man, I'm going to beat those guys because I can do it cheaper, or they can do it cheaper, and one of the strategies that people use is to try to cut prices. That's a race to the bottom. You never want to lowball. And so when we do these analysis, come up with your numbers, and that's the acceptable dollar per hour.
Yeah. If I can build on that for a second, Ann.
Sure.
So some people really, if you think from yourself, you think the price is really important. A lot of people are shopping on price. Winning at the game of business, which is the title of the whole conversation, usually the better way to win is to be more aggressively priced. And if you think about one of the reasons for that, it's because you think like, oh, $1 of revenue. It's similar whether you're getting it through new sales, you're getting through price increases. Very different.
Sure. So what is the difference if I raise the price $1 versus I get a new sale for $1? What's the difference?
So the big difference is, do I have to put costs into servicing it? Do I have to put costs into marketing to bring it in the door? So you get $1 through price increase, straight to your bottom line. Or maybe you're charging a credit card, there's a 3% fee. But if you get it through new sale, you put dollars into Google, you put dollars into putting that tech there, you're only going to capture maybe 20 cents of that dollar?
Right. So essentially, a dollar of revenue has to run through the P&L. And so if you're putting, bottom line is 20%, that dollar, only 20 cents is going to fall to the bottom line. But if you raise a price by $1, that full dollar goes to the bottom line. It's extremely powerful. Okay. So let's talk about the 3 buckets and determining, which bucket and how do we get the info?
Yeah, I think we've talked a little bit. I think let's talk about some of the fears people have.
Yep.
Yeah, because I hear people when I talk to clients, they're nervous, and there's 2 sorts of nervous. There's I'm nervous to raise prices at all, and there's might be some people like that in the room, and you don't need to raise your hand if you're like that. But I think that's a minority. I think most people have some sense that we should be raising prices every so often. But I think there's a fear. You don't want to lose clients, and you might think you're doing a price increase that's appropriate, but there's nerves about it. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they had a lot of success doing price increases. But they said that they were slow about it when they had the decision-making in the hands of their operating team. Just, there was nerves. And when they put in the hands of the data team, this is a bigger company, analytical, nerves went away. They were able to really feel safe about it. So we like to provide that sort of, well, you should be able to do it yourself too. You don't need to work with us. But here's how you give yourself, here's how you give yourself a bit of that security, is you're going to check what's happening every month, right? So you can do it once a year. You shouldn't definitely not let it go more than once a year because then you're behind the 8 ball. If you do once a year, you're doing it regularly. Regularly is okay. You start breaking your customers into do 1/12 of it every month. Now you're able to do bit by bit, and you're seeing what's happening. And you start measuring, hey, if I put out this price increase, what was the reaction from my customers? And so if you're not measuring, your people are going to get calls. Your CSR is going to say, this person canceled, they were so angry. And you're going to feel bad. It's like, it's emotional. They had that conversation. But that's 2% of the people that you raise the customer base on. Your kid comes home, got a 98% on a test. That's an A+.
You're pretty happy.
You made a lot of money doing it.
So this is a lot of analytics. It's not just raising the prices. If I raise the price, how many customers do I lose? Does that affect profitability? Because you're going to lose some customers doing this. But how many can I afford to lose?
Yeah, so you plan in advance. You say, how much can I afford to lose? And then you measure it. And so you want to see every month that you're doing it, that it's coming in well below what it needs to, what would be the break even. And if you notice 1 month, and we're looking across the whole market, so we can see it a little bit faster, but if you're doing it yourself, you'd see 1 month it's popped, your seatbelt comes into play, emergency brakes come on, you slow down, you're moving too fast. But as long as you're measuring and you're seeing that nothing bad has happened, keep the jet fuel going.
Nate, tell us about some of the challenges with getting info out of PestPack, Field Routes, whatever.
Yeah, so another objection people will say is, challenge that they're dealing with, they've tried to do on their own, and they're like, I don't know if I can do this person-by-person analysis. I don't trust my data. In particular, people don't trust the time-in, time-out data, right? Because sometimes a tech clicks in, clicks out 1 minute. Sometimes they forget to click out, it's 10 hours. So there's 2 ways to handle it. One is you can check against your GPS. Most people have, not everyone does, but most people have some kind of GPS track in their vehicle. You can compare the time that the GPS showed up at the house to the time they left to the time that's in the CRM. You go like, okay, that matched, that didn't match, let's correct it. Or you like check your outliers, right? If there's something's a 1 minute visit, you replace that 1 minute entry with what the average would be for that sort of visit.
How about, okay, so basically what we're doing is we're exporting the data out, we're putting in a spreadsheet, we're determining, we've actually created some scripting for this, but we're figuring out what the price increase needs to be. So you have 5,000 customers, and we're going to give you a list of 5,000 price increases that you're going to do, and you're going to look at this and go, I'm not going in the computer and doing that. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so again, you can do it yourself. You can make your own 5,000 list. It's very doable. But how do you enter them all? So one is you can do it yourself. That's the most straightforward way. Two, most of the CRMs have a way to do this automatically. It takes a little bit of time to set up in advance. Happy to talk to you how to do it. We've set up for field routes. We've set up for pushback. So then you just enter it, you press go. The important thing though is either way you do it, whether you do it manually, whether you do it automatically, is we're accounting firms here. Audit yourself, right? So you don't want to have a fat-fingered mistake and send someone a $1,000 bill.
When it should have been 100.
Yeah. So before the invoices go out, you run another report and just do a double check. They all run accurately.
Okay. So we're doing a quality control process before we send it out and whatnot. And we've solved for the sheer volume, because when we started doing this for clients, they were really happy, but they said, gee, I can't manually put in 5,000 price increases across 5,000 customers. And we don't want to touch your data as our accounting firm. We don't want our fat fingers doing it. Let your fat fingers do it, right? But what we've done is we've created some scripting where we'll be able to do it automatically. So tell me about some of the other things, or some of the other challenges, or the services.
Yeah.
That we
So
offer.
I think we talked about challenges of people feeling afraid. We talked a little bit about data quality. The other thing is preparing your team, right? So you certainly want to give them a sense that, like, hey, there's some people are going to call in about this. You want them emotionally ready for them. You might want a little bit of script about it. Something that people often want to do, but we actually don't recommend doing, is sending out a notice to every customer. If it's a commercial client, it's a big client, that's a conversation. But for your regular residential, it should be...
Yeah, we don't, unless state law dictates, we don't recommend it. So that's basically what we do. We have a service for this. If you're interested, let us know. But it's a much more analytical way to do things, and allows you to push as hard as you can to, the breach, as opposed to just, raising it 3%, 5%, and then wondering what happened and why.